Hi, I'm Parneetagi, and this is going to be the next video while we were talking about the synopsis of the famous novel by Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist. Now, in the previous video, we stopped at a point when we see that Oliver is once again trapped in the den of Fagin, the robbers, the people who steal our pickpockets and do all kinds of crimes every day. So now, when Oliver is trapped once again, now he is expected to go for a robbery with this boy named Sykes. He is isolated, he's mentally tortured, he's even given a book to read about the horrible crimes that he is expected to carry on. So now, when Oliver is all set for the expedition, this person, Sykes, takes Oliver on a long, long journey to the town of Shepperton, where they are planning a burglary. So they arrive there after dark. Then in the next chapter, we see that the location of that burglary is such that it is a ruinous house where his partners in crime, Toby Crackit and Barney, are already waiting for them. And at 1:30 at night, Sykes and Crackit set out with Oliver. They arrive at that targeted house where they are planning to steal and climb over the walls surrounding the house. Only then does Oliver actually realize that he is supposed to be participating in a robbery of this size, of this magnitude. He is horrified and he begs Sykes to let him go. Sykes curses him and prepares to shoot him, but Crackit knocks the pistol away, saying that gunfire will certainly draw the attention of the people around. Now, what happens is Crackit holds his hand over Oliver's mouth, while Sykes then tries to open a tiny window inside the house because now they're going to carry on with the burglary in that house. And Sykes instructs Oliver to enter through that window and open the main door, the street door, for them to let inside, reminding him that he could be shot at. He is within the shooting range all the while, so he should not make any mistake or run away. And Oliver plans to dash for the stairs and warn the family. Now, because he is an honest, innocent boy, he still has that idea, that trick that he should go and warn the family that this kind of a burglary is going to take place. Sykes then lowers him through the window. However, at that moment, the residents of that house awake, and one of the people inside the house, the family, shoots Oliver's arm. Sykes then immediately pulls Oliver back through the window. He and Crackit flee. They run away with the bleeding Oliver. So Oliver has to pay a price here also, not even till he has committed any crime. Now, in the next chapter, we see Mr. Bumble visits Mrs. Corney, the widowed matron of the workhouse, to deliver some wine. And Mrs. Corney offers him tea. And we see that he slowly moves his chair closer and kisses her. An old pauper woman interrupts them to report that old Sally, a woman under Mrs. Corney's care, is close to that and wishes to see Mrs. Corney something. Now, irritated, Mrs. Corney leaves. Alone in her room, Mr. Bumble takes an exact inventory of the furniture. Now, then we see that Mrs. Corney, she enters old Sally's room where she has reached, and the woman is dying actually. The dying woman awakens and asks her other bedside companions that they should be sent outside. She then confesses that she once robbed a woman in her care. The woman had been found pregnant on the road, and Sally had attended the childbirth. The woman had given Sally a gold locket, saying it might lead to people who would care for the child. And that child was actually Oliver. Oliver, the boy whom we know, Oliver, the boy whose story we are reading. So at this moment, Sally dies, and Mrs. Corney leaves. She tells the nurses who attended Sally that Sally had actually nothing to say after all. So she hides that secret that Sally has told her about Oliver and his mother. Now, Crackit arrives at Fagin's place. Fagin had learned from the newspapers that the robbery had failed the last night. Crackit informs Fagin that Oliver has been shot and claims that the entire population of that area then came after them. Crackit says that he and Sykes fled, leaving Oliver in a ditch. Now, this is not a good news for Fagin. Fagin is angry, of course, and he rushes into a pub which is called the Three Cripples to look for a man named Monks. Not finding him, he hurries to Sykes' residence. At Sykes' residence, he finds Nancy, who is actually drunk at that time, and she's in a drunken stupor. She's not in her senses. She reports that Sykes is hiding because Sykes is right now afraid of the police after him and for other people who might be looking for him. Fagin relates Oliver's misfortune, and Nancy cries that she hopes Oliver is dead because she believes that living with Fagin is actually worse than death. He is such a bad man. Fagin replies that Oliver is worth hundreds of pounds to him. He returns to his house to find Monks waiting for him. Monks asks why Fagin had chosen to send Oliver on such a mission rather than make the boy into a simple pickpocket. So here it becomes clear that Monks has some interest in Oliver. Monks was looking for Oliver and saw him the day Oliver was arrested. Moreover, we see that Fagin also notes that Monk wants Oliver to be made into a thief, a hardened thief, a hardcore thief. And Monks is like alarmed, he's surprised, thinking he sees the shadow of a woman. So the two stop talking and leave Fagin's house. Now, Mrs. Corney, on the other hand, she is flustered, confused, surprised, and she returns to her room. She and Mr. Bumble drink spiked peppermint together. They flirt and kiss. Bumble mentions that the current master of the workhouse is on his deathbed. He hints that he could also fill the vacancy and marry Mrs. Corney. She blushes and she consents. She agrees to what he says. Now Bumble travels to inform Sowerbury that his services will be needed for old Sally. Bumble happens upon Charlotte feeding No clay-pot oysters in the kitchen, and when No tells Charlotte he wants to love her, Bumble lectures them for their immoral ways. So we see the night after the failed robbery. Oliver suddenly awakens, but he's delirious. He's not completely in his senses. He gets up and stumbles over to the same house Sykes tried to get him to rob. Now inside that house, Mr. Giles and Mr. Brittles, two servants, regale the other servants with the details of the night's events, presenting themselves as heroes, intrepid heroes. Now Oliver knocks at the door and this frightens everybody. Brittles opens the door to find Oliver lying on the stoop. They exclaim suddenly that, oh, this is the boy, he's one of the thieves, and they drag him inside. Now the niece of the wealthy mistress of the mansion calls downstairs to ask if that poor little boy is badly wounded. She sends Brittles to fetch a doctor and constable while Giles gently carries Oliver upstairs. Now, here the story turns a bit, twists a bit. There is a change because now we have the introduction of this character, Mrs. Maylie. Mrs. Maylie is actually the mistress of that house at which Oliver was going to steal, and he's shot at the arm. She's a kind, old-fashioned, elderly woman, and she has a niece whose name is Miss Rose, who's an angelic beauty of 17. Mr. Losburn, an eccentric local bachelor surgeon, arrives in a fluster, stating his wonderment at the fact that neither woman is dead of fright at having a burglar in the house. He proceeds to attend to Oliver for a long while, and when he returns, he asks the woman if they've actually seen the thief. They have not. And since Giles has enjoyed his bravery, he was not told he has not told the woman that the thief he shot is actually a small boy. So the ladies accompany the surgeon to see the culprit for the first time. Now, upon seeing Oliver, Miss Rose exclaims that he cannot possibly be a burglar unless older, because Oliver is such a young boy, he's a child, and he doesn't look like a burglar. Evil men have forced him into trade, and they could guess that from his face. So she begs her aunt not to send the child, Oliver, to prison. Mrs. Maylie replies that she intends to send him to prison nonetheless. They wait all the day for Oliver to wake in order to determine whether he is a bad child or, as he looks innocent, he is innocent. Oliver then relates his life history to them that evening, bringing tears to the eyes of his audience, all the listeners. Mr. Roseburn hurries downstairs and asks if Giles and Brittleskins fear before the constable that Oliver is the same boy they saw in the house that night before. Meanwhile, police officers from London, summoned by Brittles and Giles that morning, arrive to look at the situation that had happened the previous night. So this was the entire scene of the burglary that had happened but could not be materialized. It did not happen actually, but because of that planning, because of that attempt of burglary, Oliver was shot at the arm. He again felt sick, but then he came into contact with these nice, generous people, Mrs. Maylie and her niece, Miss Rose. So we'll continue with the story in the coming video. Thank you for now.